start, feel free to take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone taking the time out of their day to be here. My name is Nick Kirchhoff. I'm the Colorado Rare Action Network volunteer state ambassador here in Colorado. I live in Denver. And my connection to rare is my 3-year-old daughter who has a rare condition called cystinosis. And so this is my second ever Rare Disease Day, first virtual. So I'm really excited for what we have in store for everyone today overall.
Wonderful. And to kick it off real quick, we have 2 videos to share with you today. So we're going to go ahead and play those, and then we will get started with our presentations.
I am Tristan.
Angelina.
Nama saya Syafiq.
Regina.
Habari asubuhi, Javi.
Jeg Jon Christian, og jeg bor i Norge.
I live in the United States of America.
In Australia.
Malaysia.
No Brasil.
Tunaishi Kenya.
My passion is for fashion and design.
I love to dance.
Menyusur hutan.
Para viajar e descobrir novas culturas.
Anapenda kunitazama nikipuliza mapovu.
Jeg elsker idrett og spiller spill med familien min.
Minhas paixões são minha fuga quando as coisas estão difíceis.
Ada hari-harinya apabila melakukan perkara yang biasa akan jadi sangat susah.
When your disease makes you feel isolated.
It's difficult to walk.
Å være med på laget.
When I'm tired.
Afraid.
O controle da doença pode ser desafiador.
Atau mengecewakan bila saya kehilangan masa.
Muda muhimu sana.
But we learned to be resilient.
Para apreciar os pequenos detalhes que me trazem alegria.
Kumuona mtoto wangu wa kiume anavyofurahi tunapoenda nje, nikijua anasikiza hadithi na sauti zilizo karibu.
Mencari titik perhubungan dengan masyarakat yang tak pernah saya sedar wujud.
Å være uavhengig på grunn av menneskene rundt meg.
Their fierce support.
Sua bondade inabalável.
They're big love.
Mine venner.
Keluarga.
Enfermeiras.
Doctors.
Support workers.
Assistenter.
Mashirika ya wagonjwa.
Together we are a strong community.
Nimeweza kuelekewa.
Histórias compartilhadas que me libertaram das dúvidas.
Og ga meg selvtillit.
I am Tristan. I live with sickle cell.
I'm Angelina.
And she has CASC, a neurological disorder. Saya Syafiq dan saya hidup dengan ectodermal dysplasia.
Regina, eu tinha leiomiosarcoma, câncer raro.
Huyu ni Harvey, ana SMA, spinal muscular atrophy.
Jon Christian og jeg har OI, medfødt benskjørhet.
Esta é minha vida.
Suara saya.
And I am more than my disease.
We are rare.
Kami ramai.
Nós somos fortes.
And we are proud.
And we just have one more video to share with you here before we kick things off.
Welcome. I'm Peter Saltonstall, President and CEO of the National Organization for Rare Disorders, and would like to welcome you to our 2021 Virtual Rare Disease Day event. But before we begin, I'd like to send out a special thank you to all those advocates and others who have spent so much energy and time supporting the rare disease community. So thank you. The role of Rare Disease Day is to bring together advocates and patients from around the world to help tell the story about rare diseases. There are events like this happening virtually all over this country today. And some of the audiences that we're really trying to focus on are those in the state legislatures, where advocates and legislative people come together to understand the burden of rare diseases and the impacts it can have on them, and therefore build the appropriate legislation and pathway to make sure that bills are passed that support rare disease patients. As a matter of fact, NORD's doing that in a very focused way with rare disease advisory councils. We've got them set up down in 16 states and are building them in others. I think 2021 is going to be an interesting year for us. The reason I say that is because we've just come off of a very difficult year with a pandemic that's impacted the rare disease community in a number of different ways and has really shown some of the inequities in the healthcare system. For all of you that are watching today, the importance of the Rare Disease Advisory Councils is critical to the success of being able to communicate the story and the needs of the rare disease patient community. So in conclusion, I would really like to make sure that I recognize and thank all of those sponsors who have helped us make this day a reality. Without your continued support, none of this would happen. So a sincere thank you from all of us at NORD and the patient community. Taking part in events like today's are really important to the rare disease community, and we must always remember that alone we are rare, and together we are strong.
All right, thank you. And we're going to go ahead and get our PowerPoint presentation back up. One moment. All right, perfect. Now I'll turn it back over to you, Nick.
Awesome. So just wanted to welcome everybody again. Here's kind of the agenda that we have for the day. A lot to go through, but some very great information, some fantastic speakers, as well as one of our state representatives here, and Representative Kyle Mullica. I'm going to do a quick plug for joining the Rare Action Network right now, but then at the end, I'd love to kind of discuss more about where I think we can be headed as a group, as well as, my current experiences, having been here for almost 2 years now. But we are always looking for, new volunteers, people to join. Currently I'm the only state ambassador here in Colorado. Would love to add at least another ambassador to that, and potentially some more people that just want to help and volunteer whenever they can. So with that being said, I'd love to turn it back over to Elise. And she's going to provide you a great overview of the report card, and I think speak a little bit about Rare Disease Advisory Councils, which is the overall theme for today.
Thank you so much, Nick. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Elise Patel, and I am the Western Region State Policy Manager for NORD, and I actually reside here in Denver, Colorado. So excited to be with all of you today. And we're excited to share with you and talk about NORD's Rare Disease Advisory Council work today, and share why RDAC started and where we're headed this year. As many of you know, 25 to 30 million Americans are impacted by a rare disease, which breaks down to about 1 in 10 individuals. And while that's quite a few people directly impacted, we're finding many lawmakers aren't necessarily aware of the unique challenges that are faced by the rare disease community. And so the solution was to form rare disease advisory councils, where a diverse group of those in the rare disease community could come together and advise state government. And this is especially important because we know that a lot of our healthcare decisions are made at the state level. And we also see this as an enormous opportunity for the community and legislators to come together and partner in a more strategic way to address issues on a regular basis. The first council was actually created in 2015 by some wonderful advocates in North Carolina, and since then has gained traction across the country. So on this slide, you see that there's currently 16 states that have passed RDAC legislation, with Massachusetts being the last state to do so just last month. Much of the progress that has happened has been over the course of the last 2 years, with 10 governors signing RDAC legislation into law since 2019. And NORD launched Project RDAC this past year as a way to really help optimize the existing RDACs and increase the number of RDACs across the country. And under this initiative, NORD is providing opportunities for RDACs to collaborate with each other, as well as providing educational resources to guide RDACs for every step of the journey. And feel free to visit our website, rarediseases.org, and click on the Project RDAC tab. There you'll find resources, upcoming events, and an interactive state map where you can view Colorado-specific information. So currently, Colorado does not have an RDAC. However, with your help, we're hoping that we can start that process to establish a council. And this will include building a diverse coalition of stakeholders from the rare disease community to make sure that everyone has their voice heard and the efforts. So here you'll see a little graphic that shows some of the people that we know make up the rare disease community. And if you are interested in being part of this effort moving forward, please feel free to email us. You can reach us at rdac@rarediseases.org. And again, please feel free to check out that Project RDAC website that's listed here. And I also wanted to discuss with you today a great resource that we have, which is our NORD State Report Card. And this is our 6th year publishing a state report card. The report card is a tool to evaluate how effectively states are serving the rare disease community. It's a way to track individual state progress on priority policy issues as seen on this slide, and enable effective advocacy by providing a tangible tool to see how your state measures up in key areas. And the issues outlined touch on several critical and relevant policy areas. However, we do understand that there are still other policy areas that impact the lives of rare disease patients. And this year, we transitioned the report into a new interactive digital format. There's a state report card landing page, as well as a web page for each of the 8 issues that are highlighted in the report. And feel free to use the link here as a way to see how Colorado measures up on these areas. And real quick, I'm gonna give you a demo on how to navigate our website to really make full use of our report card.
So here we have the landing page for the 6th edition of the NORD State Report Card. We've just got a little intro text up here, and then we have the 8 issues that we assessed in the 6th edition of the report right here. If you go over here, we have a drop-down bar where you can click and select your state. And then right underneath of that, we have all of these patient stories about some of the issues that are focused on in the report card. So now I'm just going to navigate to one of the issue pages. I'm going to click Medicaid financial eligibility, and that'll take you to this individual issue page. We just got a little bit of intro text again at the top, and then some more text about what the issue really is and why NORD cares about it. Underneath, then we have some text about the grading methodology for this section, as well as the rubric, which is available at the bottom, and also underneath of the map right here. Again, we have that drop-down bar where you can select your state. Then if you go to the left over here, you can click and access all of NORD's policy statements on the particular issue. And then you can also click and access the appendix for that section. So next, I'll look at the map a little bit. So you can hover over each state on the map and see the state's overall grade, which is bolded there for this section, as well as the subgrades that were averaged together to get that overall grade. If you click on any of the states, it will take you to that state's individual state report card page. So I clicked on Virginia, and here is Virginia's state report card. If you scroll, you can see that we have all 8 sections and their overall grade up here in orange, and then the subgrades underneath. And you can also click this right here if you want to open a printable version of the individual state report card.
Perfect. And so finally on the state report card, I wanted to dive a little bit more into detail about our methodology. So all of the data that you'll see on the report card is information as of November of 2020, with the exception of the Rare Disease Advisory Councils. We updated the RDACs through December of 2020 to reflect the exciting passage of RDACs in both Ohio and Massachusetts at the end of the year. And any current bill that's in the state legislature or bills that may have already even passed in the beginning of 2021 were not factored into the report card grade. Each issue, as you saw, has its own appendix that we will derive our overall grade from. And then each individual page also contains the grading methodology section where you can read more about how it was evaluated. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Nick, but wanted to welcome you all to email us if you have any questions about our Project RDAC efforts or the state report card, and you can reach us at policy@rarediseases.org. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Elise. And we are very fortunate to have the entire Western region director here in the state of Colorado. And so she's been a great resource for me. And I'm sure she can be an even better resource for everyone else as well. So thank you again, Elise, for that. Next, I wanted to start it off with a couple of our patient stories. So first, I'll introduce Angela Contis to get going.
Hey, thank you so much, Nick. I appreciate it. Hey, everybody. So glad to see everyone on Rare Disease Day today. And I am here to share a little bit about my story. And this is actually, this first picture here is a picture of me on a bad day. Like many patients, I think I have good days and bad days. This was a particularly bad day in the hospital. And if you can advance to the next slide, please. I'll share with you a little bit about my condition. After a lifetime of symptoms, I was diagnosed with a genetic condition, primary immune deficiency, at the age of 36, after really a lifetime of symptoms that went misdiagnosed or undiagnosed, largely because many physicians just don't know which tests to run when they run into somebody like me. And what it really means is I'm at very high risk for potentially frequent and potentially deadly infections, as well as some unusual autoimmune complications and also lymphoproliferative complications, which is a very fancy word for some specific kind of rare types of cancers that can happen with, that are related to the immune system. So in my case, I have autoimmune complications that affect my joints. I have a lot of swelling and stiffness that makes it difficult to function in my joints. And then I also have a rare and potentially life-threatening complication in my lungs and my liver that is sort of like a slow-growing lymphoma that causes really bad scarring. That can be life-threatening. So my treatment consists of lifelong therapy, which is a weekly infusion that is plasma-based. So I really rely on plasma donors to provide the medication that I need to stay alive and stay safe and be able to function in my life. And then also chemotherapy, which is what I receive to help treat this rare complication that I have in my lungs and my liver. And one thing that's kind of been interesting is that as someone with an immune deficiency, a genetic immune deficiency, I basically live, you know, the way we've all been living for this past year, where we have a lot of precautions and have to be really, really aware of an infection and take a lot of precautions. A lot of that is not new for me. I do get out and about. I work full time. I travel under normal circumstances, but I have to take a lot of precautions and wear a mask and some of those other things in order to protect myself. So it's been interesting to see the whole world have to enter into that during the COVID times. But some of the challenges that I've faced throughout my journey, you know, as I mentioned, I had a delayed diagnosis just because I think I had a lot of unusual symptoms, but many of the more common tests that are run to measure someone's health turned up normal in my case. And the few tests that needed to be run that were actually simple and inexpensive were just, the physicians I was seeing just weren't aware and didn't know that those would be tests that would be appropriate to run on a patient with my symptoms. I also, you know, I'm very grateful that I have a treatment. I know many patients with rare diseases do not have a treatment available. I have a treatment available, but it's extremely expensive and difficult to access through insurance. And I go through a very rigorous reapproval process every 6 months to fight for what I need to stay alive. Also, there was the condition in my lungs and my liver is so rare that there was no approved treatment for that. And so what the good news was, there are chemotherapies that are used for cancer patients that appeared to be appropriate for what I had and were the only option that would save my life. But because that would be an off-label use of those medications, it was very difficult for me to access. And I actually had to hire a lawyer and go through a very arduous process to get approval to have access to that medication to save my life. And even though I have really good insurance, I'm very lucky that way because I am still able to work and I have good insurance. It's still extremely difficult to navigate that pathway to get what I need. At least every 6 months, I have an arduous battle with the insurance company to make sure I have access to what I need. And I do still have a large out-of-pocket expense, even with very good insurance. So if you can please advance to the next slide. Thank you so much. So with that said, I just wanted to share that I think, the advantage of having an RDAC here in Colorado, I think it would be a really important forum to make available for some of these challenges that I've experienced that I know are very common to many patients in the rare disease community, such as delayed diagnosis, prohibitively expensive treatments, if there is something available, oftentimes a lack of local experts in these rare diseases or complications that come with those diseases. I personally have to travel out of state, and I'm very lucky that I have the resources to be able to do that. But I do have to travel out of state to see the specialist who is familiar with what is happening with my lungs and my liver, and he really is the person that has kept me alive. But not everyone has the ability to travel like that to see the people that they need to see. And again, lack of access to the medications, such as those that are in use for and approved for other conditions, but would be considered off-label for rare diseases. And one of the challenges there is that when a disease is really rare, there's not a lot of incentive for the pharmaceutical companies to pursue indication. And so the chances of there ever being an indication for what I have, for example, are pretty much zero because it's so rare. But that medication did work for me. It did save my life, but it was extremely difficult to access since it was an off-label utilization. And then again, as I mentioned, the difficulties navigating this excessively kind of complex pathway with insurance, even if you have insurance, to get what you need, even if you have a treatment available, is extremely difficult and arduous for patients. And I think these are some of the issues that we could discuss together. And this last picture, I just wanted to share, this is what I might look like on a good day. And I'm fighting for these good days as a patient so that I can hopefully contribute to society and make contributions to the rare disease community and to my family and to society in general. These are the days that I'm fighting for. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to my story.
Thank you so much, Angela. I mean, so many of those things that you mentioned are things that we deal with, I'm sure, in our larger patient community, and you are absolutely making an impact on everybody. So thank you for being here and speaking again. The next speaker that we have is Avery Allman. So I'd like to introduce Avery.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. I'm really excited. So this is my story with rare disease. I have a rare diagnosis of myelin oligodendrocyte glycoprotein antibody associated disease. So this is actually a recently coined neuroinflammatory condition that causes inflammation in the optic nerve, but it can also cause inflammation in the spinal cord and brain. So a little bit about my story. I was a track runner all throughout high school, and that was something that I was really adamant about pursuing. And towards the end of my senior year, I actually got a huge scholarship to run in college. And those first two pictures on the left-hand side in the next slide, those are pictures of me at some of my most memorable meets. So right before I was set to go to my sophomore year, I took a trip to California, and it was during this trip that I noticed I started having a lot of weird symptoms. It started with a headache that then progressed into body weakness, and that then progressed into a migraine, me not being able to really see things out of my left eye. So when I was on my way home from that trip, we went to the ER, and we went through this process 4 times before I was actually admitted. They kept trying to say that it was a migraine, that I was fine, to just go home and rest. For me, that was really hard because I was working 2 jobs at the time, and I was trying to train to be a good collegiate athlete. So during that last ER visit is when the paralysis started. It started in the arms, and then that then progressed to the legs, and it then progressed into me not being able to use the bathroom. And then my right eye started to go blurry as well. So I had a fully blind left eye and a partially blind right eye. So with Plex and steroids, Plex is a treatment called plasmapheresis, and it is basically the cleaning of the antibodies in your blood. And I actually had to learn to walk again. And that's that picture up there with my nurse. And it was really difficult time because I was an athlete that was working out consistently, and now I had to learn to walk again. So it became a really hard process. I had to be on steroids, which is that top picture in the corner. And then I've been on several different types of treatment, 3 treatments before the one that I was on now that I finally think is stable. So where to go from here? If you want to advance to the next slide, please. This is my friend Chelsea Tucker. She was diagnosed with NMOSD in January of 2019, which is the diagnosis I had first. She had a misdiagnosis of multiple sclerosis 10 years before receiving a correct diagnosis. And it was stories like that that really inspired me to do more. So I began to post my story, and I actually had the opportunity to collaborate with some amazing pharmaceutical companies, such as Alexion, Genentech, and Viela Bio. And I was able to go to patient days. And with all of this kind of inspiration, I decided to start my own rare disease foundation called Couch Pennies. And through Couch Pennies, I've been able to raise money for NMOSD and MOG. And we're really kind of hopeful that we can make an impact. So next, I want to talk about my friend Courageous Corey. She had her first attack of NMOSD in January of 2019 and wasn't diagnosed until March. Now that may not seem like a long time in between, but during that time, her body was attacking her brain to the point where she has lesions all over her brain now. She is currently exhausted all of the approved treatments and the off-label ones, and she's awaiting for a special trial to be set up for her so that she can have a chance to thrive. And that is my biggest thing, is we deserve a chance to thrive. It's stories like Chelsea, Corey, and myself that are prime examples of why we need rare disease advisory councils due to the delays in diagnosis, the extreme out-of-pocket costs, preventative action to avert misdiagnosis, limited access to medical specialists, and my biggest one as a patient is a patient's care ending when the physician's understanding does. It is oftentimes that we are pushed to from doctor to doctor because they don't know what to do. And having a rare disease advisory council that we can always have as a resource to connect the pieces of rare disease diagnosis that we kind of don't talk about. And it's going to take all of us. It's going to take the health department officials. It's going to take physicians that want to understand us. It's going to take patient advocates like myself. It's going to take advocacy organizations like NORD and Couch Pennies. It's going to take academic researchers. And the biggest thing is elected officials that will fight for us when our voices are silenced. It is at that level that we will find change, and that we will find laws that are passed that back up the rare disease community. Now, I may not be a track star anymore, but that's because I'm running a new race, and that's a rare race for a cure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Avery. Yeah, that's awesome. That every time that I get to hear Avery speak, I get really excited, and I get even more motivated, than I previously was. So thank you so much, both Angela and Avery, for sharing your stories today. I think it's very impactful and definitely, provides me an extra boost to keep fighting. So thank you very much. Our next speaker now, I'd like to introduce Emily Roberts, and she is with the Colorado Bioscience Association. So she's going to speak a little bit about what they do.
Thanks, Nick. And I also just want to echo your comments. Thanks to Angela and Avery for sharing your stories. I think it's clear you're both incredible advocates, and really appreciate you sharing some of the challenges you face on a daily basis. Again, my name is Emily Roberts. I'm the Vice President at the Colorado Bioscience Association. I'm just going to spend a minute or so introducing our association and our life sciences community here in Colorado. And then Nick and Elise asked me to just highlight a few focus areas for us at CBSA, where I think there are some shared goals and opportunities for meaningful collaboration between industry, between the rare disease patient community, and many of the other stakeholders that are here today, and where an RDAC could play a pretty big role. So at a high level, Colorado Bioscience Association represents about 720 life science companies and organizations across the state that are really driving innovative products and solutions to improve and save lives. When we say life sciences, we're talking about a couple of different sectors. We're talking about biotech and pharmaceutical companies, but also diagnostic and testing, digital health, medical device companies, ag bio and animal health. And then we also represent the academic and research institutions in the state who play a really vital role in cultivating a strong life sciences workforce here, but also are making some critical investments in biomedical innovation. And in fact, many of the companies here in Colorado have actually spun out of the research that's been conducted at the universities and the research institutions. And they're really being led by scientists, entrepreneurs that are really passionate about developing breakthrough therapies and technologies to improve outcomes for patients. Our life sciences community is also building a national reputation for leadership in genomic technologies. So things like gene therapy, cell therapy, gene editing, and immunotherapy, which are really powerful tools that have the potential to diagnose and treat some of the underlying causes of disease rather than just alleviating symptoms. I think the developments in genomics here in Colorado, but also across the country, are particularly exciting and promising for the rare disease space, where a treatment like a gene therapy could potentially replace a non-functioning or a missing gene and really halt the disease in its track and improve quality of life for patients. I'll say we've seen some really big progress in this area for rare diseases with new therapies that provide treatment options for patients for the very first time, but there is still tremendous unmet medical need, as we've heard, and I think this audience knows all too well. So for CBSA and for a lot of our members, we're really committed to working with the patient community and other aligned stakeholders on a number of sort of key areas and goals. Go to the next. First, so these are a few areas and goals, and I think to the point that's been made, I think establishing a Rare Disease Advisory Council here in Colorado would be a critical step in advancing a lot of these areas, and I'll just walk through them really briefly. I think first and foremost to support education and raise awareness and understanding of rare diseases and the issues that patients are facing. I think with policymakers and the broader community, but also to Avery's point, she listed off a lot of folks that need to be part of this equation, and I completely agree. Healthcare providers, researchers, government agencies, the life sciences community and other stakeholders. I think that's a really important goal for us as well. I think second, to advance patient-focused public policies, and this is certainly a broader and more overarching goal, but I think looking at the work of some other states that have passed this legislation and set up RDACs, I think an advisory council can play a critical role in ensuring that the patient perspective is integrated into every step of health policy development and implementation from the very beginning. And I think that's identifying challenges and needs, but also what are the recommendations, implementing those recommendations, and then evaluating the impact. And so I think, again, that's a huge place where advisory council, I think, could make impact. We've heard from Avery and from Angela about diagnosis and the challenges that patients face in getting an accurate diagnosis in a timely manner. And so it's certainly a priority for us as well, whether that's through improvements for the state's newborn screening program, or if that's just appropriate coverage for other genetic testing that's become available that could lead to earlier diagnosis and possible treatment. And then improving access and coverage. I think Angela spoke about this and made a lot of really compelling points. And this is, something that we care about always, but specifically for rare disease therapies and technologies, I think there are increased barriers for accessing new and existing treatments. And I think an advisory council could play a big role here in providing recommendations about how to best address those barriers and ensure there's as smooth a pathway as possible to get those treatments to patients here in Colorado. And then the last one, and again, I know these are big goals, but advancing rare disease research and drug development. And I think so many things that fall into this bucket, but Angela, I'm sorry, made this point as well. these are smaller patient populations, and certainly there are some big policy changes that have happened at the federal level in the last few decades that have made a difference in really incentivizing and increasing investment in this space. And I think that continues to be a priority for us as to how do we continue to do that and build on the work that's been done. And I think some of that's R&D funding, at NIH and FDA and other federal agencies. Some of that's supporting the R&D that's happening right here in Colorado. There's also a lot of work to be done with the FDA and some, innovative approaches to everything from clinical trial design and natural history studies. How are we tracking these diseases? There are unique challenges for our industry in terms of the small patient populations and the limited treatment options. And so for us, it's certainly a priority to continue to think about different policies that can help to really accelerate the research and then the development of new therapies in this space. So just in closing, reiterate our support, for an RDAC as just a really important resource and a tool that we're seeing used in other states, and really look forward to working with everyone to try and make that happen here in Colorado.
Thank you, Emily, so much for being here and speaking to that. I've got to meet Emily in person a couple of times, and so not only is she obviously a wonderful person in her job, but she also has extreme compassion for people in the rare disease community. And so, it was somebody that I was happy to reach out to, and happy that she said yes to be here with us, because it's truly more than just a job for her. So I want to thank you, Emily, for being here.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Next up, we have Erica Wright, who is our genetic counselor from Children's Hospital, and so much more. So Erica, please take it away.
Nick, you're too kind. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. So as Nick alluded to, I am a genetic counselor at Children's Hospital, Colorado. So I really just wanted to give you an overview of where we're at with genetic evaluation, testing, and counseling with our group. So we are one of two clinical genetics groups in town. Rocky Mountain Hospital for Children also has a smaller group, but for the most part, we see the bulk of patients with either undiagnosed or diagnosed rare genetic conditions throughout Colorado, Wyoming. We help cover Montana, Western Nebraska, Western Kansas. So we have a huge area that we treat patients with. So as we talked about in the beginning of today, most rare diseases are genetic. And I'm grateful to say and happy to share today that we have really made great strides with genetic technologies, even within the last 3 to 5 years, that now allow us for timely diagnosis and increased yield when we do meet with a family and try to determine what is happening with their children. And some of those things that have rapidly progressed in recent years has been the ability to look at multiple genes in one foul swoop. When I started as a genetic counselor back in 2003, we would order one gene at a time. So you can imagine for a family or a patient on a genetic diagnosis odyssey, that diagnostic odyssey might truly last for decades, as each time they came back around, we would then go through the entire process of trying to find 1 or 2 genes that were candidates to determine what the underlying cause was of their concerns. So now we utilize multi-gene panels at the very least, that patients come in, and often it's a few hundred genes, if not a few thousand genes that are looked at in one foul swoop. We now use whole exome sequencing as the next trick in our pocket to find patients to help understand diagnoses. One of the most amazing strides we've made in the last year, though, at Children's Hospital is rapid whole genome sequencing. And this is a tool that we use for patients under 6 months of age that are in our hospital as an inpatient, where a rapid diagnosis is needed to help determine, is there some type of treatment that can be found or utilized, and really just finding a diagnosis early and quickly. The rapid whole genome sequencing, we currently send out to a lab in California, and turnaround time is less than 72 hours. So back in my day, when it took months to see a result of one gene come across, now it is not uncommon to get a result in less than 72 hours. And they are pushing that lab out in California to try getting results in under 24 hours. So very phenomenal that we're able to do that. Last year, despite COVID and despite having to switch most of our genetic evaluations to telehealth, we were able to serve thousands of families and had 5,718 visits documented in 2020. Many of those are first-time patients, and many of those have unfortunately been waiting to connect to a geneticist and a genetic counselor. And I'll talk about those barriers shortly, but we have been continually been able to expand, hire geneticists and genetic counselors over the last few years to really handle the need in our community. That includes our outpatients, inpatients, and one of the amazing things we have at Children's Hospital is many multidisciplinary clinics for some of the more common diagnoses that we uncover during that genetic workup. Next slide. So with that said, while I started with a lot of exciting news, unfortunately, as Avery and Angela did a wonderful job sharing their stories today, instead I wanted to highlight the barriers to both diagnosis, management, and treatment. Access to genetics is still difficult. We struggle with wait lists. In the ped setting, again, we've improved with getting patients in more timely, but that's still taking a few months to get that referral in and get that patient scheduled. In the adult community, that wait is even 2 to 3 years. So realistically speaking, even when a pediatrician or primary care provider might suspect a genetic diagnosis, it still will take time to get in for a visit and get the appropriate testing done. And we continue to struggle nationally with a shortage of both geneticists and genetic counselors. Telehealth has been a wonderful resource for us to serve our communities that are in the rural setting. This includes many of patients on the Western Slope that previously had to travel to see us. We've now upped our game when it comes to telehealth. And while we were already doing a decent job with telehealth, nothing like a COVID shutdown makes you figure out how to do it within a 2-week time frame. And again, I don't think we'll ever go back to 100% in-person visits, knowing how beneficial telehealth has been for many of our families, even those that live close by. If they have a child with complex medical needs, coming into Children's Hospital is not an easy feat. And so being able to offer telehealth to a family's home has been very helpful for access to care. Insurance coverage of testing and treatment is still a huge barrier. For our pediatric patients, sometimes they can qualify for a Medicaid waiver. It takes a really savvy and very persistent family, though, to get that paperwork done, figure out which waiver their child qualifies for, and get that secondary Medicaid insurance. Even for those that have private insurance and might think it's a very good insurance, unfortunately, there's a lot of caveats when it comes to genetic testing. There's a lot of co-payments that could be thousands of dollars on the get-go. And then we know that treatments are not always covered either. Again, with rare diseases, it's not always, there's not always great evidence about some of these treatments. And so unfortunately, we get a lot of pushback with insurances, and knowing that, again, it's a repetitive cycle of things we have to keep pushing for. For the group of disorders that I work primarily with, inborn errors of metabolism, many of our patients are on medical formulas and foods. Medical formulas are covered in Colorado, but there's also, unfortunately, in the legislation from years past, there's some wiggle room in there, and we don't always get those formulas covered. Low protein foods, many of our patients have to be on. Those are not covered with our current Colorado legislation. And many of our families also need to be on supplements. These are not by choice, but because they don't fit under a prescription, they unfortunately will pay for these supplements out of pocket. Therapies, physical, occupational, speech, feeding therapy is not always covered by insurance, just supportive care of just day-to-day living. And then the big thing we're finally there at is gene therapy. So for spinal muscular atrophy, there was a patient that was highlighted in that initial video that now has a gene therapy that's FDA approved. It is now on our newborn screening panel so that we can find those patients quickly and confirm their diagnosis. Unfortunately, the price tag is $2.2 million for that gene therapy. And it's tough. It is in our group of disorders here in genetics, we are getting into phase 2 and 3 trials for additional gene therapies, of which we're part of some of those trials. And truthfully, once those are FDA approved, they too will come with multi-million-dollar price tags. And so that's tough to swallow. But we also know with rare diagnoses, there's just little to no research for many of our families and patients, and little to no treatment options. When we do these large genetic panels of thousands and thousands of genes, and we finally find an answer for that family, often we feel lucky if there's been a case report of a handful of patients so that we can talk to the family about what that outcome might be and what they can expect. But truthfully, these families turn to Facebook and try to connect with maybe the dozen or 2 dozen families that are living around the world with the same condition. We have a tool called Gene Matcher. It turns out to be the Facebook for us providers to connect with, that if we have a rare gene discovered, that we often can reach out and post our comments on Gene Matcher, hoping that another provider or researcher might reach out, and that's how we link to care. Next slide. And so I was just wanting to give you that overview today. Obviously, a rare disease advisory council would be beneficial in Colorado. It would really help get all these groups talking and give us a platform to talk about those barriers. And I am curious to go on our report card and see where Colorado's at when it comes to newborn screening. I mentioned we added SMA last year. In March, we are going back to the Board of Health and asking to add 3 new disorders that will align us with the national, what we call the recommended uniform screening panel. So hopefully we'll get some more points in that category. And we hope to have those disorders implemented late in 2021 into 2022. But we're very excited that we are finally kind of getting up to par with our newborn screening panel. So thank you again for this opportunity to speak to you all today.
Thank you so much, Erica. I always love all of the information you provide and learning about what's up next for us, and as we keep expanding and hopefully trying to grow our treatment options for all of us in the rare community. So thank you so much for everything that you do as well. Next, I'd like to introduce State Representative Kyle Mullica from House District 34. Last year, he was our, I guess, our sponsor when we were at the in-person event. And, you know, overall, Kyle is an absolutely great guy. I've got to work with him in the past on a couple things, and he's truly trying to work for his community and improve the lives of others. And during this whole time, he's been very active on the front lines. You may have seen him on the news as someone who's been fighting COVID, and he's traveled across the country to do that as well. And so, you know, first we want to thank you for your service, Representative Mullica, but then as well, you know, thank you for your service as a representative too, being a voice for all people. And so I'd like to open it up to you to now speak about kind of what you look for when it comes to stakeholder work, or what you'd like to see if a group of us were to collaborate and try and come together for something like an RDAC.
No, I appreciate that, Nick. And, you know, we're all lucky to have you down here being an advocate, and you've done an amazing job. And, you know, I think the biggest thing is you've done your daughter proud. And so really enjoy working with you and the work that you've done. And, you know, I think first off, I want to apologize that we can't be together this year. You know, I think it's really impactful to have you all down here at the Capitol on Rare Disease Day, making sure that your stories are being heard. Obviously, you know, with the pandemic, we're trying to be as safe as possible, but looking forward to making sure that next year you all are down here. Like Nick said, my name's Kyle Mullica. I represent House District 34. If you're in Colorado, House District 34 is it represents all of Northglenn, Federal Heights, and parts of Thornton. Also an ER nurse, and I'm the only nurse that serves in the Capitol. And so, you know, I really take a lot of pride in not only representing my community, but also representing my profession and bringing that perspective down here to the Capitol. I want to also thank you all, and specifically Angela and Avery, for sharing your story. I think it's very impactful and it's very powerful to be able to hear these stories. And I think it does impact legislation and policy that is looked at and is passed. you know, and being on here today, I've, you know, I've personally heard those concerns loud and clear, you know, those challenges that you all are facing, the high cost of care, the extensive medical needs, the social isolation that can come along with this. And, you know, I think that what I want to get across, I think the biggest thing is that your voice matters. It's an important voice. It's a voice that we should be hearing. And I want to make sure that you all recognize that, and that, you know, it can be intimidating. It could be nerve-wracking to try to advocate or to lobby. But no matter what, no matter how nerve-wracking that is, you need to know that your voice matters and that your perspective matters. And that's our job as elected officials, is to represent you and to make sure that your voice is being heard. And so, you know, I remember before I was elected how nerve-wracking it was to come testify in committee or to come, you know, lobby my legislator. You know, I think that over time, remembering that piece, you know, helps out a lot. And so I think that that's my biggest takeaway. I think that there is a lot of room here in Colorado to look at policy in this area. I think that there's desire, and I think that that desire grows stronger when we hear your stories. And so I would just encourage you to continue making sure that you share your story, making sure that you continue advocating, not only for yourself, but for the broader community as well. And so, you know, I look forward to continue to working with you all, look forward to helping out however I can, making sure that we continue to move forward as a state, and that we continue to help you all out.
Thank you so much, Representative Mullica, again, for being here and just taking time out of your day. I don't know if some of you know, but they are busy in session now. They're back to work for us. And so to be able to have Representative Mullica here and take time is a truly benefit. And it's also great for him to hear our stories and to hear kind of those things that we're having to go through. So thank you again for being here, and thank you for your service. I appreciate it. Okay, well, I was hoping to have this great live drawing door prize kind of thing, but then found out it doesn't work exactly as well as we wanted to. And so after the event is ended, we'll do a random drawing, and we will, for I think 2 people, I believe. And so we will send you some awesome Nord swag. I have some of it myself. I love it. My little girls really love the zebras. Those are a hot commodity. So if you get one of those, make sure you don't leave it with someone you don't trust. Okay. But yeah, overall, you know, I guess if we can go to the next slide now, Elise. You know, here is my contact information. If you visit rareco.org, that'll kind of pull up this page. We also have a Facebook page as well. And then my email is there, and I can add it as well to the chat when I'm finished speaking. I just really want to encourage everybody. If you have a voice, you can use it. You know, I'm just a dad. I'm nothing special, but I was motivated with my daughter's condition. And after I found out that so many other people are going through these same kind of struggles on these large, broad topics that the RDAC may be able to help fix, or at least provide our voice in these discussions, I think it's extremely important. You know, you don't have to have an advocacy background. You're experts in what you're doing every single day. And so, you know, I really would love for us to join forces together, because obviously our small patient communities are small, but, you know, together we can make a larger impact. Everything that I've been able to do with NORD has just been fantastic. I've learned more about just the issues in general that kind of face the rare disease population, not just my own. And then we've also had opportunities just to connect with others like us. You know, other caregivers, other patients, other, you know, pharmaceutical reps, everything. It really can just bring everybody together in order to, you know, try and make meaningful, larger scale change. You know, one of the things that we did was really cool is we had a book club this past year, and we read Abby Meyer's book on basically how NORD came together. And NORD was basically established by a bunch of patient groups coming together and fighting for the Orphan Drug Act of 1983, I believe. And so, you know, Abby was just a normal person. She's incredibly humble, but she's done amazing work for our community. And so she was able to join us, and we were able to speak with her. And it was incredibly empowering. It was also, kind of one of those things where I feel like I'm in the right place because as I was reading, the second ever drug approved via the Orphan Drug Act was a treatment for my daughter's condition. And so I'm extremely thankful for all of the work that the smaller patient communities have come together with, because that's made an impact on my life without me doing any work whatsoever. And so, I've kind of taken this on as an opportunity to pay this forward. The next group, I want their lives to be even better. I'm fortunate right now that our community does have a treatment. It has some really bad side effects though. I mean, we're giving medications around the clock to our daughter. And the stuff that makes her feel the worst is actually the medications that keep her alive for so long. And so, with the adoption of new gene therapy treatments and, things on the horizon, I'm incredibly hopeful that, one day my daughter will be able to speak about the disease that she once had, but that she doesn't really remember it that much, now that she's older. And so, I would just really like to invite you to do whatever you can, help however you can, but your voice is powerful 100%. And it's necessary in this conversation if we would like to make meaningful change as a group. Specifically RDAC, as soon as I heard about it when I joined, I got incredibly excited because I do think it provides us a voice. It provides everyone that's involved in healthcare an opportunity to come together, be together, and talk about the issues that matter most to all of us and try to find solutions for things. And so, this has kind of been the overall theme for Rare Disease Day. But now I would also just like to open things up a little bit because this is an opportunity for us to be together. And if you have questions on things, comments, or you'd like to discuss anything that was said, I'd love to just open up the floor pretty much. Even if, sorry, you just wanted to basically talk about your connection to Rare, why you're here, or, kind of if there's any issues that you're facing currently. I think this is a great opportunity too. We've got wonderful people in our policy department, as well as Nord staff that can also just listen to some of the things that are coming through, because truly that is how we work. Usually when somebody, notifies me of an issue, I send it on to the policy team and they've acted pretty quickly. And I think telehealth is one of those things that, during the pandemic was obvious that Nord was really fighting for, to help improve, to make sure that patients had the access, even though obviously the pandemic was happening.
I guess I have a question, if that's okay. I'm going on 3 years of trying to find a diagnosis as to why my body decided to stop working. I've had illnesses since I was a child. That a lot of them got put into the mental chemistry portion of it, like bipolar or something like that, which I think could have been a misdiagnosis. I was late getting on because I was having some scans done at the hospital. But the biggest problem is with trying to find a medical provider that is interested in looking into something that's not clear cut. I have a great rheumatologist that I'm working with, and unfortunately I'm in the process of finding a new primary because mine retired. But I just keep getting we'll go to the ER, and the ER is, you get there and they're like, well, we can't do anything for you because we can't diagnose anything, go to your primary. And then I go to the primary and they go back to the ER. Is that something that this group is working on, getting more medical plans based out patient per patient versus passing us along?
I just wanted to kind of add in and say that I completely understand what you're going through. I've had to face the doctors passing me from doctor to doctor too. So I definitely do understand that. And I think that's a really big thing that rare disease patients struggle with, is we're often passed along and not given a second thought, but that's kind of where our care ends. And I just kind of want to encourage the medical portion of RDAC to kind of do something about that.
And just to echo, what Avery said, and thank you, Cassandra, for sharing your story with us. I think that what you shared is exactly why we really want to get a Rare Disease Advisory Council in Colorado, because we know that you guys have, there's unique challenges that need to be addressed. So really appreciate you sharing that with us today.
Okay. I live in Western Slope, and I will go to the website, give more information later, but I'd definitely like to get involved in this group.
Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I definitely don't want to cut off any conversation or if anybody else wants to speak, but I'm going to go ahead and play one last thank you video for everyone, and then we'll rejoin as a group. And anybody that would like to stay on or has any additional questions, we're happy to answer those.
Every
Sorry,
year,
Elise, you're
last
still on
day
your
of
screen.
February, the National Organization.
Sorry about that. Is it not sharing? Let's try one more time.
There we go.
All right, thank you.
Every year on the last day of February, the National Organization for Rare Disorders joins together with others around the world to raise awareness of the challenges faced by people living with rare diseases. Achieving health equity is even more difficult for rare patients. To have equity in health means everyone has an opportunity to be as healthy as possible, regardless of social, geographic, economic, or other obstacles that may be working against them. At NORD, we appreciate your support, which allows us to work on issues like health equity and many others, and for our staff and volunteers to bring them to the forefront on Rare Disease Day.
From the Volunteer State Ambassadors, we would like to say thank you to all of our Rare Action Network supporters for helping us connect with rare patients and families in our states.
And thank you for allowing the Rare Action Network to raise important issues with state lawmakers on Rare Disease Day and throughout the year.
Did you know that in medical school I was told, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras? But what about the more than 25 million Americans living with a rare disease? At NORD, we are humbled to provide help and resources to our zebras and their caregivers.
NORD support allowed me to catch up on some overdue bills, including my rent. Thank you for your support, NORD, and thank you for supporting Rare Disease Day.
From all of us at NORD, thank you for your dedication to the rare disease community on Rare Disease Day and every day.